Hi there, I am Laina Orlando and I am so excited to create this video for you. We have just completed Christmas. It is the year 2021 and we are about to close out this epic year. We are entering pretty soon in a couple more days into 2022, but the energies of that year are already strong and with us. One of the things that has become very clear to me as a teacher of spiritual principles since 2007 is that I need to refine my message in a much, much clearer way. It's always been pretty clear, but we're going to get even clearer because it has been given to me to teach what the ego is all about. It has been given to me to see the ego in me, the guidance that I have been receiving from the consciousness that I know is Jesus has been with me since before 2007. But in 2007, I had an experience that allowed me to feel the divine, the source of all that is. I got to meet God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I and the Father, Mother became one. In that moment that I experienced that connection, lasted for about 45 minutes. When I was in that state of oneness, of wholeness, everything about the world was shown to me. Everything about the universe, not just the world, but about everything, about consciousness. But my mind was not prepared at that time to process what had been shown to me. My heart felt it. I knew my truth. There was no doubt after that instance what was true for me with a capital T. However, my mind was still conditioned with the little truths, the truths of the world, the truths that are the hand-me-down beliefs that society has operated with for thousands of years. I was really clear that for me to be able to return to that sensation, that feeling, that certainty of that oneness, I had a lot of work to do. And I began to teach what was being given to me. I was given workshops called The Power of Awareness, and I was given a very simple exercise to do. And I practiced it on me. That exercise is called Shift and Lift. It is about shifting my beliefs about what's happening in the world, shifting my perceptions and lifting my vibration. At the time in 2007, I knew that I was teaching truth, but I didn't actually practice it in my life, not at that time. Through years of teaching it to others, having a workshop called The Power of Awareness, coaching people, I was constantly teaching what I was being guided to practice within myself, and I saw some incredible changes in me. People would ask me if my workshops were based on A Course in Miracles, because what I taught was how to look at your ego and contrast it with the voice of your soul. I didn't even know what A Course in Miracles was at the time. I was focused on what I was being guided to learn, and I was not guided to learn about A Course in Miracles then. But in 2011, I was guided to read the book A Course in Miracles, actually 2010. And I began to study the Course, and for the past, 10 years, I teach from the Course because I found that the Course in Miracles helps us understand the difference between the low frequency perception of the ego versus the contrasting higher frequency, higher vibes of spirit, soul, God, whatever you want to call it. So for all this time, I have been teaching the distinctions between the voice of the ego and the voice of God. And I have chosen, and really it's not because it's a decision that Laina made, it's what I have been given to do, to focus on the teachings of the Course in Miracles and other books that have been channeled by Jesus, as was Course in Miracles since that time. Another book is A Course of Love, which is what I'm doing my 2022 year-long spiritual mastery class. Those students, we're going to focus on the 40 days and 40 nights inside of A Course of Love, because the Course in Miracles prepares us to fully understand the ego. We have to know what the ego is all about. And I'm telling you, most people, especially spiritual people, Christian people, religious people do not understand the true aspect of the ego. This is what was taught to me. This is what was shown to me. It became very easy for me to see the ego in myself and teach others how to see the ego in themselves. You cannot connect with God and hold your alignment while the ego mind is still active. So we have to understand what the ego is, because that is what blocks us from that permanent alignment with God. Another book that I teach from is The Way of Mastery, also channeled by Jesus, part of continuation to A Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles is a beginning. It's a beginning of a journey to help us understand the mind. But something that has also happened to me is through the course of the last couple of years, and actually it started a long, long time ago, I began to question everything. I began to question, where did religion come from? How did I not understand about the voice of God and the voice of the ego? How come the things that Jesus was helping me feel inside of me were not consistent with what was taught in the Bible? Or there were snippets of it in the Bible, or there were contradictions about it in the Bible that left me more confused. Why is it that organized religion doesn't teach the same things that Jesus is guiding me to feel inside? So I became very curious. This started about 2012. About 2002. That's how far back my journey began. So almost 20 years now. I began to question religion. I began to look into, how did it get created? Who decided that God is a God of wrath, that God is a God that should be feared, when I was being taught and I had an experience of a God that is only loving, that is only compassionate, a God that desires for us to have total, complete free will, created us that way so that we can attempt to try anything, whether it's to go dark or to move into the light. And it's a God that does not punish, because it's a God, it's a consciousness, it's an energy, it's an essence, it's an all that isness that is not adequately described about in the Bible or in teachings, religious teachings that I have studied. So I went down what you could call rabbit holes. This last couple of years, I have discovered that because I went down those paths, some people consider me a conspiracy theorist, which is really interesting, because the more that I understand the ego, the more that I see how those who operate from their ego mind, and the reason I have this chart here is because I teach also from the book by Dr. David Hawkins called Power versus Force. And I find that he does a phenomenal job of breaking down what is of the voice of God and what is of the voice of the ego. Let me move this back a little bit to give you a little more clarity. So when I was going through my process, I was being guided to clearly see every thought, every belief, every action, every emotion that operates below the line when I'm in my ego. I was also able to see with clarity the thoughts, the beliefs, the emotions, the actions that I take when I am above the line. So my teachings and my coaching have been very, very consistent from the beginning, that if you don't see your ego, if you don't understand your ego, if you're not familiar with it, you cannot do something that we must do, and that is to be able to transcend it. And this requires an incredible amount of work to get to that level of consciousness where you can see very clearly your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions with an incredible level of honesty, and see, is this from my ego or is this from God? And you know, the ego is nothing more than all of the beliefs that we have been conditioned to believe to be true that are actually not true. So for example, an egoic belief that creates an identity. If you have grown up believing that God is outside of you, that's not true. God is outside and inside. God is everywhere all at once. Omnipotent, omniscient, all of those words. You can't have God on a cloud and not in you, and God be all that is. Because if God is all that is, it must be in everything that is. So how could it be on a cloud and not in you? So that's a belief that is not true. So the ego mind gets created by taking on an identity as Christian that puts God outside, meaning I am no longer connected to God. This teaches other false beliefs that are egoic, that I've got to pray to a God out there somewhere to help me. This disempowers me from knowing that I access God within. I and the Father are one. Jesus taught us this. I began to understand the formation of the Catholic Church and how all that came about, the books of the Bible that were used that were selected, teachings that were selected to be part of the New Testament, and what was left out. And everything that was left out was basically what empowers us to know the truth of who we are. So what was kept in, much of what was kept in, not all of it, was forming an egoic mindset. And that's all that the ego is thoughts and beliefs that are opposing God's truth. So when you begin to understand the truth of God, it's truth with a capital T. When you begin to believe things that are not true, that block you from knowing the truth of God, the mind is filled with information that creates an incredible structure of thoughts and beliefs that intertwine and intermingle. For example, that God is outside, then the belief that as men and as women, you're supposed to behave a certain way. And I grew up Catholic, so I was told that, you can't have sex before marriage. So there's a belief that I can't do this, and if I do have sex before marriage, I'm a sinner and God's going to punish me. And these are the beliefs about how a woman should be and how a man should be. All those beliefs are intertwined. And then that I'm a sinner, that I got to pray to God. And then things happen. Let's say you don't get, I got married and ended up getting divorced. So now I am a woman who had sexual relations before I was married. So I'm a sinner. God's outside of me. I'm also divorced. And that creates an idea that there's something wrong with me, that I didn't fulfill what God wanted me to do, and I got divorced. And it creates a whole mental construct about who you are. And none of that is true according to what God knows is true about who we are. And I point up there, I know it's just habit. Every single one of us is whole, absolutely perfect, complete. Course in Miracles made it really clear. Not only is God everywhere, but we are one with that allness that is what we in essence are. But we are not taught to cultivate a relationship with our expanded self. We are conditioned into a sense of contraction. So our mind begins to be filled with information that winds around a thought system that makes us really forget our expanded self, and we begin to become contracted. So the ego, in essence, operates as a way for us to create, I'm going to call it like a spiral in our mind. So from the time that we are born and we know ourselves, because when we are born, and I've got a little grandchild, I see it in my 7-month-old child, there's a state of wonder. There's a state of knowing that it is grander than we might think it is because we see its tiny little body, but it is boundless. Yeah, sometimes stuck in this body, and he doesn't have the words to be able to express how he feels. So of course, that is a sense of contraction. So he's attempting to express himself, but every single one of us is born one with the knowledge of who we truly are as God created us. We come from the all that isness. So I'm going to say we come in quite expanded, all that knowledge. But as we begin to get conditioned into who we are, what my name is, what my religion is, my ethnicity, my color, what does that mean to be Latin, to be black, to be white, to be Asian, all of those things begin to contract our mind, and we begin to spiral into a very small sense of self. That's what the ego is. This thought that who I am is very small. What happens to us is we descend from the higher vibration, where my little grandson, he is just love, joy, and peace is what he feels, except for when he has his bodily conditions like sleep, hunger, needs to go to the bathroom. We have a physical body. We're going to take care of the physical body. Even though the Course in Miracles teaches us that we're not a body, we're free. Depending on your level of consciousness, you come to ascend to a place of knowing the truth that you are not a physical body. But if you don't understand that, if you haven't felt that fully, then those teachings become sometimes not very helpful. However, they are true, because remember, when I had my experience with God, it took me years, in some cases, I could say up until now, where there are things that are still being revealed to me that my mind couldn't absorb because my consciousness had descended to such a low point. It was too thick, it was too dense. I couldn't grasp and comprehend my oneness with all that is. I felt it, so I couldn't deny it, but my mind couldn't quite understand it. So I operated in the world and I was of it for a very, very long time. So to reverse the process is to ascend in consciousness, to question all of our beliefs until we get to the point that we're not operating from beliefs that are taught to us. So in essence, we are unwinding our mind out of the conditioning and we're expanding our awareness to accept more of the truth of who we are. Takes a while. But in 2022, humanity is going to be seeing in a much bigger way all of the ways that we have been conditioned for thousands of years into operating from our ego. And one of the beautiful things about the awarenesses that are coming into light is that not a single one of us is disconnected from God. Not one of us. We're all the prodigal children. We're all one with all that is. We're one with each other. We just don't know that. Every one of us has access to this truth. We have access within our hearts to connecting with the love, the light, the truth that is the essence of our beingness. To do that, your mind has to go into a state of curiosity. You've got to be willing to question everything that you've been taught. Humanity is at a precipice right now. There's a line that has been drawn in the sand. There is a bifurcation. Some are going to ascend into the light, which means they're willing to see more clearly, to hear what's been going on. And some are going to descend further deeper into the darkness. That means that they want to maintain a sense of, nope, I don't want to see that. That's conspiracy. That's too negative. That's too dark. I'm not going to look at it. A lot of spiritual people. I know I did for a while fell into that, where you are too much in the light to look at the darkness. Well, we have to look at the darkness because we have to face the ways that we have been conditioned into believing things about ourselves that are not true. To undo your ego, to get to the level that you transcend it, you must move through all of the beliefs, all of the judgments that we have been taught are okay. We've been taught to judge each other based on color, on culture, on gender, on sexual orientation, on have money, don't have money, political party, whether you are jabbed or not jabbed, whether you put a cloth on your face or you don't. We have been conditioned to believe things about each other based on external appearances. That has been a massive distraction from where we are all the same and equal if we go inside into our hearts. So we are seeing now nothing more, and this is a biblical thing, nothing more than the result that each and every one of us has to face, where you have to make a decision. Are you going to shift and drift into descending into more darkness, or are you going to shift and lift and lighten up? Are you going to expand your consciousness? Are you going to question things? Well, my friends, 2022 is a year for me to make it really clear that one of the things that is super important to me is that we question everybody's motives, because as it is stated in the Bible, and I'm not a Bible scholar by any means, I just know snippets here and there, but I've become more curious about it, is that you can only worship one of two masters. And in the Bible, it is stated you worship God, which is the truth, consciousness, or you're going to worship money. And money is associated with self-worth. I'm sorry, I said that wrongly. It's associated with net worth. God is associated with self-worth. So when we descend into forgetting who we are, our worth diminishes. We don't know who we are, so we can't feel worthy. So we begin to accumulate and acquire and our mind gets conditioned into becoming worker bees, making money, buying things, getting so entangled, so tethered to things of the world, attached, that we become very, very small. Our world gets really tiny, as I was showing in here. And there are many circles that we have to move through. When you are associated with your self-worth is connected to your net worth, You sell your soul to money. Your world is very small. It's all about acquiring, protecting, getting. The process that we are going through right now is glaringly obvious that we have a world that is being split, and it is being ruled by those who worship money and by those who actually listen to God. However, those who worship money are greater in numbers because we have all been conditioned to worship the money makers. We worship the movie stars, the CEOs, the billionaires. Well, we have to get really clear that a mind that worships money is going to be blocking God. And today, right now, we're in the middle of this war. Who is your allegiance with? Is it with your lack of worth? Because if you don't have self-worth, you're going to operate in guilt, in shame, in fear. You're controllable. You will do whatever you're told to do because, well, you don't want to break the rules, because the conditioning of a mind that doesn't break the rules is a mind that does not know how to feel freedom inside. Therefore, it wants safety on the outside because it doesn't really understand full freedom. It thinks freedom is which grocery store can I pick, or which cereal box can I pick at the grocery store. Our true sense of freedom is only experienced when we transcend the ego and we move into the wisdom that lets us know that God created all of us equal. And if you choose to follow this religion, or you choose to follow this mandate for you in your heart, because it's what God is guiding you to do, you don't need to make sure that that's mandated on anybody else. That's how you know freedom is really where you're operating from. If you, on the other hand, for you to be okay, to be safe, you need to control everybody else around you, you've just been controlled because your egoic mind, the thoughts in your head, convinced you of things that are not true, that your safety comes from following what somebody else tells you. Course in Miracles tells us that we have one problem, and it's the authority problem. We've been conditioned to give our power away to external authorities. But in order for you to be able to bring your power back and align with God within, realize that God's not out there, it's inside of you, you must begin to question every rule, regulation that the outside tells you you must follow, when in your heart it doesn't feel like it's true. So there is a lot that is going to be happening for me in 2022. I am committed to helping people understand what the ego is all about. I am going to create an entire new series of videos. I'm going to call it all Shift and Lift. I'm going to teach people how to shift their perception and lift their vibration. And I'm going to do talks. I used to do conversations on Mondays. I called them Align with Laina, but it's all going to be about shifting and lifting. If you are ready to transcend your ego mind, because you understand your ego, you're going to love this. If you don't even know what your ego is all about, if you don't even know that you have to transcend your ego mind, if you think that your ego is your personality, and let me tell you what, most spiritual people are completely asleep because they have a spiritualized ego. One of these teachings from Jesus, the Way of Mastery, says that the spiritual ego is the last egg to be cracked. It is the last obstacle that we have to move through before we can align with God. Because a mind that gets all spiritualized and thinks I know everything and thinks that, I'm listening to God, source, spirit, universe, whatever, and I create my own reality, but I still need to control other people. And I've got to follow the rules that false authorities have given me. It's not a mind that is free. And if you are inside of that, if you consider yourself spiritual, I did for a very long time, I am not spiritual. I am spirit. I am the essence of spirit incarnated and expressing itself to help anybody who wants to break free of any mental structure, be it religious mental structure, spiritual mental structure, atheist mental structure. We have so many mental structures to break free from. And if you don't understand what is in your mind that has you be in fear, that has you judge others, shame others, guilt yourself, if you don't understand that you are created equal because God is in all of us equally, whether it's in our Constitution that states that all men are created equal, men and women are created equal, and we're endowed with the same inalienable rights, every one of us. life, liberty, happiness. We have eternal life. That's how you know that you are one with all that is. When you begin to expand yourself, you move out of the contraction of your mind and you expand your knowingness to begin to really understand your place in the whole cosmos. But you can't really do that if you're all stuck in your head. You got to move out of your head. You got to move out of your societal boundaries. You got to move out of your community boundaries, your state, your country, your planet boundaries, and begin to expand yourself. And that happens. You're guided. It'll happen naturally. But if you don't understand the ego mind, you cannot wake up. And right now, we're in bifurcation. What we're about to see is how we have been asleep at the wheel. We let our minds get trained by others. We got conditioned, and we were forced into a contraction. Now, not one of us is a victim here because we're all powerful creators. God's inside of us. So to reclaim that connection with God, we have to do the healing of our victim stories. We got to look at where we have been bullies to others, that we victimize them, because that's a process of karma. When you're operating from ego, you're swinging from right to wrong, from good to bad, from victim to bully. It's just the way that it is in ego. When you move into your spirit, your soul, when you're operating from your God essence, you're in a state of neutrality. You see everything from a very peaceful place. You are not emotional. Emotions happen, but you're not emotional because you're grounded in the truth of who you are. Beautiful things. From that place, you can begin to better study what has happened to humanity. How have we been taken on a trajectory for thousands of years where we're repeating cycles of wars, of dictators, of tyranny, of controlling, of division, of suppression, of censorship. This is not the first time that has happened. And you know why that keeps repeating itself? Because it's the ego. The ego is repetitive. It does the same thing because it trains the next generation in the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. To be able to free ourselves from that, we've got to look at it square in the face. Right now, we are being shown where the whole of the planet is being controlled. They're attempting to control those who are so afraid that they're willing to give up their powers to a false authority. And when you follow the money, you begin to understand how that happened, because you can only have one master. And those who worship money and listen to those who worship money do not have their own internal self-worth aligned with how God created us. And when you align with how God created us, you are not controllable. You are not interested in following those who follow the money. You're only interested in freedom for all beings. You realize that life, liberty, and happiness, everybody's well-being comes to them from God inside. Everybody's liberty is guaranteed by God because we're all equal. And when you can live your life fully in alignment to be yourself fully, you're free to be you. You have the liberty to be you, which clearly there's no suppression there. There's no censoring there. There's no division there. There's no treating humanity in rights and wrongs, because there's something that you connect with inside that automatically moves you in a path of compassion, collaboration, co-creation, grace. You begin to understand what happiness is really all about. Most of us do not know real happiness because we operate in fear, which means we believe we have to buy it, we have to give up our power to have it, and we have settled for very little happiness, very little. Today is the day that I invite you to consider studying A Course in Miracles. I give a class every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It is free. You can find it on my website. You can find it in my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram. I am going to become very, very vocal to give people tips and tools and as many ways as I possibly can. Utilize all of these wonderful teachings, but I am also going to look at books about what's happening right now. I'm going to help you see the ego in yourself and in others. If you don't understand the ego in those who are controlling you, whether it be the medical establishment, the education system, the religious institutions, the monarchies, the corruption in government, if you don't understand the ego in yourself, you can't see it in another. And that's how we get controlled. Because if you don't see your ego, you cannot possibly transcend all of the crazy controls that have been implemented for thousands of years. And Jesus warned us about this 2,000 years ago. He told us about the money changers. He wanted us to know about these people who worship this God, but they didn't follow the rules. You have to break the rules that you were taught by the outside to come inside and find the rules that God placed in you. And they truly are about equality. They are about eternal life, so that you can stop being afraid of your body, afraid of death, so that you can have total liberty to be who you are, because that's the only way you're going to experience happiness. And it is our birthright. The Course in Miracles says we have one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to be happy. To be happy, you need to know who you are. You cannot know who you are if you're operating from who you think you are, that is conditioned by external sources. There is a lot to unpack. I've got tons of information. Please, like I said, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. I'm all over social media. But go to my website, lainaorlando.com, and sign up for a free course. It's called The Soul's Journey. So you can understand how the soul descends and gets totally and completely just controlled by the egoic thought system, and how we become tight and tense and contracted and manipulative, because it's all about survival. And then what do we need to do to ascend, to return to the truth of who we are? So it's 6 stages that we go through from conception to enlightenment. I am here to share everything that has been given to me, that has freed my mind. I've been able to transcend my ego. I still have egoic thoughts, they happen, but I don't believe the thoughts that are in my head, because I know the distinction between false thoughts that are of separation and true thoughts that are of unity and oneness. Thank you so much for watching this. If this has been inspirational to you, please share it. Help me get the message out. I am here to teach people about the ego, because if you don't know your ego, you cannot transcend the very thing that blocks you from knowing God within you. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day. Happy New Year. May all your dreams come true, and they will, because we are the creators of our own reality. Are you creating with ego, or are you creating with God? Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye.